The massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled with the light of 3 suns. Tall windows stretched from floor to ceiling, showing the purple-orange sky of Capital World. Inside, 20 beings of different shapes and sizes sat around a curved table, their faces glowing with the blue light from their data screens. High Observer Marcus, with his gray skin and large eyes, tapped his finger on the table. The room fell silent. "Bring in the human," he said, his voice calm and measured like all decisions made by the council. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Robert Thompson walked in, his black suit a stark contrast to the white and silver robes of the council members. He tried not to stare at the alien beings around him. Some looked almost human, others were as different as a fish from a tree. But all of them had the same expression: cool, calculating, and completely logical. "Representative of Earth," Marcus spoke, "your species has achieved faster than light travel. This qualifies you for assessment. However, we have concerns." Thompson stood straighter. He was a diplomat with 20 years of experience, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "What kind of concerns, High Observer?" A screen appeared in the air between them. It showed videos from Earth: a firefighter running into a burning building, a mother lifting a car to save her child, soldiers jumping on grenades to save their friends, and scientists working on problems that everyone said were impossible to solve. "Your species regularly defies logical behavior patterns," said Council Member Diana, the youngest of the group. Unlike the others, her voice held a hint of curiosity. "You ignore clear danger warnings. You pursue goals with astronomically low chances of success. You create art and music that serve no practical purpose. You even engage in activities you call sports that risk injury for mere entertainment." Thompson opened his mouth to respond, but Marcus continued. "We have documented 2,847 cases where humans chose the statistically inferior option. In 73% of these cases, the logical choice was clearly presented to them." He paused, looking directly at Thompson. "Our preliminary conclusion is that humans are immune to logic." A murmur went through the council chamber. Thompson noticed some members moving slightly away from him, as if illogical thinking might be contagious. "With respect," Thompson said, keeping his voice steady, "perhaps what you see as immunity to logic is actually a different kind of logic." "Explain," Marcus said, his large eyes blinking slowly. Thompson walked to the screen and pointed at the firefighter. "This man ran into danger knowing he might die. The logical, yes, but because of his choice, 3 children lived. Those children will now grow up to contribute to our society." He moved to the next image. This scientist was told her theory was impossible. She spent 12 years proving everyone wrong. Now we have clean energy in 50 cities. But the statistical probability of success in these scenarios was less than 12.4%. Another council member interrupted. "The logical choice would be to accept the higher probability outcome and preserve oneself for future scenarios with better odds." Thompson smiled, and several council members leaned back, surprised by this unexpected facial expression. "That's exactly what makes humans special. We don't just calculate the odds. We change them. We see a 12.4% chance and think that's more than zero. Where you see illogical behavior, we see hope, courage, and the possibility of making the impossible possible." The chamber fell silent. Marcus studied Thompson for a long moment, then turned to the other council members. They seemed to communicate without speaking, their expressions shifting slightly. Finally, Marcus turned back to Thompson. "We have reached a preliminary decision. Humanity's apparent immunity to logic represents a potential danger to yourselves and others. We recommend a quarantine period of no less than 50 Earth years." Thompson felt his heart sink, but he kept his diplomatic smile. "Before you make that final, I have a proposal. Let us show you what human illogical thinking can do. Give us a chance to prove that sometimes the best solution isn't the most logical one." Marcus tilted his head, and gestured Thompson couldn't quite interpret. "You wish to Prove the value of being illogical. Through logic. Exactly, Thompson said, his smile growing genuine. Isn't that the most human thing you've heard today? The next day, Thompson stood before the council again. This time, they had prepared what they called a comprehensive analysis of human illogical behavior. The air was thick with tension as High Observer Marcus began the presentation. Let us examine case study 147, Marcus said, bringing up a new hologram. Humans gather in large numbers to watch other humans kick a ball across a field. They paint their faces in colors, scream until their voices break, and some even cry when their preferred team loses. All of this produces no measurable benefit to society. Thompson watched as images of the World Cup final floated in the air. The passion on the faces of players and fans alike filled the sterile council chamber with a strange energy. Or consider case study 329, council member Diana added, her voice softer than the others. Humans spend approximately 33% of their productive hours engaging in activities they call hobbies. They build tiny ships inside glass bottles, climb frozen waterfalls, and create pictures that don't even look like real things. The hologram changed to show painters in their studios, mountain climbers hanging from cliff faces, and an old man carefully placing a miniature mast inside a bottle. The most concerning evidence, Marcus continued, comes from your entertainment industry. The hologram shifted again, showing scenes from movies and books. Humans regularly consume fictional scenarios that they know are not real. They willingly experience emotions like fear, sadness, and joy over events that never happened. Some even report crying over the death of imaginary characters. Thompson noticed something interesting. While most council members watched with their usual logical detachment, a few seemed fascinated. One even leaned forward slightly when the hologram showed a group of children laughing at a puppet show. Furthermore, Marcus said, humans persist in clearly impossible tasks. This human spent 15 years trying to solve a mathematical problem. The hologram showed a mathematician at a blackboard. When told it was unsolvable, she said, and I quote, "That just makes it more interesting." And she solved it, Thompson pointed out. After wasting 15 years on a problem that all logical analysis said was impossible, Marcus countered. Thompson stepped forward. "May I show you something?" When Marcus nodded, he walked to the center of the chamber. "Computer, please show the construction of the first human space station." The hologram changed to show dozens of nations working together, despite their differences, to build something unprecedented. By your logical standards, this project should have failed. The countries involved had been enemies for generations. The technical challenges were enormous. The cost was illogical compared to ground-based solutions. Thompson paused, letting the images speak for themselves. But humans have something that goes beyond logic. We have dreams. Dreams are not measurable variables, one council member objected. Exactly, Thompson smiled. You can't measure a dream, but you can measure its results. Those illogical sports teach us teamwork and push the limits of human physical achievement. Those wasteful hobbies drive innovation and creativity. Those fictional stories help us imagine new possibilities and understand different perspectives. The council chamber fell into silence. Thompson could almost see the logical minds around him trying to process this concept. Finally, Marcus spoke. You appear to be suggesting that being immune to logic is beneficial. I'm suggesting that logic alone isn't enough, Thompson said. The universe isn't a simple equation. Sometimes the best path forward isn't the most logical one. Sometimes you need to take a leap of faith, follow your heart, or just believe in the impossible. These are all highly irregular concepts, Marcus said. His face showed the closest thing to confusion that Thompson had seen on a council member. We will need to conduct specific tests to evaluate these claims. Thompson's eyes lit up. This was exactly what he had hoped for. What kind of tests did you have in mind? Marcus looked at his fellow council members, then back at Thompson. We have prepared a series of scenarios. If humans truly benefit from this immunity to logic, You should be able to demonstrate it under controlled conditions. When do we start? Thompson asked. Now, Marcus replied. The first test awaits. The testing chamber was a massive white room that could change its shape and contents through advanced alien technology. Thompson stood in the center, surrounded by floating screens showing his vital signs. In the observation area above, the council members watched with their usual calm expressions. The first test is simple. Marcus's voice echoed through the chamber. We will present 3 scenarios. Each has a clear logical solution. We want to observe how humans approach them differently. Thompson nodded, but then raised his hand. I have a request. He could see the council members stir slightly at this unexpected deviation from protocol. I'd like to bring in a small team. After all, humanity's strength isn't just in individual logic, it's in how we work together. After a brief pause, Marcus responded, Granted. But this deviation will be noted in the test results. Within an hour, Thompson had assembled his team. Captain Jane Wilson, a search and rescue expert known for impossible saves. Technical Director James, an engineer famous for unconventional solutions. And Dr. Helen Reed, a scientist who specialized in thinking outside the box. As they gathered in the chamber, James whistled at the advanced technology around them. This is incredible. The energy matrices alone must be. Focus, Thompson reminded him gently. We're here to show them what humans can do. Marcus's voice filled the room again. The first scenario involves resource distribution. The second deals with conflict resolution. The third, he paused for effect. The third is a situation our own analysts have declared impossible to solve. Perfect, Helen said, grinning. I like impossible. The air shimmered, and suddenly they were standing in what looked like a space station's control room. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. Scenario 1, Marcus announced. A colony of 10,000 people has life support resources for only 7,500. The logical solution is to select those most valuable to the colony's survival and... No, Jane interrupted, stepping forward. That's not how we do things. The council members stirred again at this interruption. Thompson could see Diana leaning forward with interest. The logical solution, Marcus began again, would kill 2,500 people, James finished. But logic isn't everything. Give us access to the station's systems. What followed was pure human chaos, at least from the council's perspective. James dove into the engineering systems, muttering about power redistribution. Helen analyzed the life support data, suggesting ways to increase efficiency. Jane mapped out the colony's layout, looking for unused spaces. They're not following any established problem-solving protocol, one council member observed. No, Diana replied. They're doing something far more interesting. In 30 minutes, the team had a solution. Converting unused cargo bays into temporary living spaces, recycling water in new ways, and setting up a rotation system that would let everyone survive until help arrived. This solution is unorthodox, Marcus said. It relies on untested methods. That's what humans do, Thompson explained. We don't accept no-win scenarios. We change the rules. We find new ways. We survive, even without a guarantee of success. Especially then, Jane said. That's when we humans do our best work. Marcus studied them for a long moment. Very well. Scenario 2 will test this theory further. Are you prepared? The team shared looks of determination. Ready, Thompson answered. The room shifted again, transforming into what looked like a diplomatic chamber. 2 alien species stood on opposite sides, clearly on the brink of war. Now, Marcus said, show us how human logic handles peace. Thompson stepped forward, a small smile on his face. He had spent his career working with difficult diplomatic situations. Sometimes, he said, the most logical solution is to be completely illogical. Above them, Diana watched with growing fascination. For the first time in her long life on the council, she was beginning to wonder if their definition of intelligence needed to be updated. The diplomatic chamber buzzed with tension as two alien species faced each other. On the left stood the crystallines, beings of pure geometric shapes who communicated through light patterns. On the right were the mist dwellers, floating clouds of conscious gas who spoke in wavelengths of energy. These species, Marcus explained, have been at war for 300 years over mining rights to a shared asteroid belt. All logical solutions have failed. Thompson looked at his team. Helen was already scanning the data about both species, while James studied the asteroid belt's composition. Jane watched the body language, or what passed for it, of both species. The logical solution, Marcus continued, is to divide the asteroid belt equally. Yet both species reject this option. Because it's not about the asteroids, Jane said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Look at their positioning. The crystallines keep shifting to catch the light, while the mist dwellers flow away from it. They're not just angry. They're uncomfortable. Thompson's eyes lit up. Helen, what's the composition of those asteroids? Mostly carbon and silicon, but there's an unusual radiation pattern. She stopped, then smiled. Oh, that's interesting. Share with the class, James asked, looking up from his own data. The asteroids don't just contain minerals, Helen explained. They're natural radiation filters. The crystallines need direct light to survive, while the mist dwellers are damaged by it. They're not fighting over mining rights. They're fighting over survival. The council members stirred in their observation chamber. This was not a variable they had considered. Thompson stepped forward, looking at both species. We don't need to divide the asteroids, he announced. We need to reposition them. James caught on immediately. If we arrange the asteroids in a spiral pattern. He quickly drew a diagram in the air. The crystallines can mine the outer layers that get direct sunlight, while the mist dwellers can use the shadowed inner layers as radiation shields. Illogical, one council member declared. The cost of moving asteroids would exceed the value of the minerals. But the value isn't in the minerals, Thompson countered. It's in the peace. It's in two species learning to work together instead of fighting. How much is that worth? The chamber fell silent. The crystallines flickered rapidly, while the mist dwellers swirled in complex patterns. There's more, Helen added. The waste material from crystal mining can actually enhance the radiation-blocking properties for the mist dwellers, and the energy the mist dwellers release could help power the crystalline light processors. They don't just need to share the space, Jane realized. They need each other. Thompson turned to the two species. Your war isn't about resources, it's about survival. But you can do more than survive. You can thrive. Together. The crystallines and mist dwellers began to communicate rapidly. The simulation froze, and Marcus's voice filled the chamber. This solution is highly irregular, he said. It requires massive cooperation, trust between enemies, and significant resource investment without guaranteed success. Yes, Thompson smiled. It's completely illogical. It's also right. Diana spoke up from the observation chamber. The solution addresses needs that weren't even part of the original problem parameters. It creates opportunities for mutual benefit that no logical analysis predicted. That's what we do, James said. We don't just solve problems. We find the problems behind the problems. And sometimes, Helen added, the best solution isn't about being right or logical. It's about understanding what people really need. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Very well. You have completed this test in an unexpected manner, but the final scenario will be different. No amount of creative thinking can solve an impossible problem. Thompson looked at his team, seeing the same determination in their eyes. Want to bet? The chamber began to change again, preparing for the final challenge. Above them, the council members watched with growing interest. Some were beginning to wonder if perhaps their logical approach had missed something important all these years. Ready? Thompson asked his team. They nodded. After all, Impossible was just another word for hasn't been done yet. News travels fast, even in the vastness of space. Within days, recordings of the human problem-solving tests had spread throughout the Council's central world. Young aliens gathered in viewing chambers, watching again and again as the humans found solutions that pure logic had missed. In the Great Library, a group of junior council members huddled around Diana as she showed them more Earth records. "Look at this," she said, displaying an image of the first human flight. Their scientists proved mathematically that heavier-than-air flight was impossible. Two humans who owned a bicycle shop proved them wrong. But how did they know it would work? Asked a young quantum mind, its crystalline structure glowing with curiosity. "They didn't," Diana replied. "They tried anyway. That's what makes humans different." Meanwhile, in the Council's private chamber, Marcus faced growing pressure. Half the Council now supported studying human methods, while the other half warned of the dangers of abandoning pure logic. "Their influence is spreading," one elder member complained. "This morning, I found my own assistant trying to solve a problem through what she called creative thinking. This must be contained." Before Marcus could respond, Thompson walked into the chamber. He wasn't scheduled to appear, but the guards had stopped trying to predict human behavior. "Sorry to interrupt," Thompson said, not looking sorry at all, "but you need to see this." He activated the main display, showing scenes from across the galaxy. A young crystalline engineer had used human-style thinking to solve a centuries-old power distribution problem. A mist-dweller scientist had started experimenting with art, discovering that certain patterns could communicate emotions across species barriers. "It's not just solving problems differently," Thompson explained. "Your people are discovering new ways to see the universe. They're learning to imagine, to create, to dream." "This is dangerous," the elder member insisted. "Without pure logic, how can we maintain order?" "Order?" Thompson smiled. "Look at Earth's history. We've gone from living in caves to reaching the stars, not through order, but through chaos and creativity, through trying the impossible, through being illogical." Diana stepped forward. "High Observer Marcus, I request permission to establish a new department, one that studies human problem-solving methods and tests their application in our society." The chamber erupted in discussion. Marcus raised his hand for silence. "This is unprecedented," he said. "For 10,000 years, the Council has guided civilization through pure logic. Now you suggest we change our fundamental approach because of one species." "Not change," Thompson corrected. "Add to it. Keep your logic. It's valuable and important. But add human creativity, human passion, human dreams. Imagine what we could accomplish together." A young council member suddenly spoke up. "Yesterday, I tried something illogical. I played what humans call music. I experienced feelings I cannot explain. But I want to experience them again." More voices joined in. Some shared their own experiments with human methods. Others warned of the dangers. The chamber filled with debate. Emotional debate, something unheard of in council history. Marcus watched it all, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned to Thompson. "You realize what you've done?" he asked. "You've introduced chaos into a system that has maintained peace for millennia." Thompson nodded. "I've introduced life into a system that was just maintaining itself. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, it's unpredictable. Yes, it's illogical. But look at them, Marcus. Really look." Around the chamber, council members were engaged in passionate discussion. Young members were sharing ideas. Even some elder members were cautiously admitting that certain human methods had merit. "They're not just thinking anymore," Thompson said softly. "They're feeling. They're imagining. They're living." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he did something completely illogical. He smiled. The warning sirens started at midnight, Capital World Time. Red lights flashed through the crystal spires of the council city as automated systems began failing one by one. In the emergency command center, aliens of all species gathered around displays showing cascading system failures. The quantum core is destabilizing. A technician reported, their holographic form flickering with stress. All logical recovery sequences have failed. Estimated time to critical failure, 3 hours. Marcus stood at the center of the chaos, his usual calm facade cracking slightly. The quantum core powered everything on Capital World, from life support to gravity controls. If it failed, millions would die. Apply the standard emergency protocols, he ordered. Already tried, Diana replied, rushing in with a datapad. 17 times. Something's different about this failure. The core isn't responding to any known solutions. Marcus looked around the room. Dozens of the galaxy's best minds were running calculations, applying proven formulas, following logical steps that had worked for thousands of years. And they were all failing. Then he did something that, just days ago, would have been unthinkable. He turned to Thompson. "We need human help," Marcus said simply. Thompson was already activating his communicator. Within minutes, James and Helen rushed into the command center, followed by Jane, who had been training some young aliens in rescue techniques. "What do we know?" James asked, immediately moving to the main display. The technical director, a being made of pure energy contained in a metallic shell, began explaining. "The quantum core uses zero-point energy to power our civilization, but something has corrupted the base programming. It's not following any known patterns." "Show me the code," Helen said, stepping forward. As streams of complex equations filled the air around them, she frowned. "This isn't corruption. This is evolution. Your quantum core is learning." "Impossible," several aliens said at once. Said the people who thought we were immune to logic. Thompson smiled. "Helen, what are we looking at?" The core's programming was designed to be perfectly logical, but over thousands of years, it's developed something like creativity. It's trying new things, making connections we didn't expect, like a child learning to think for itself. "But that's causing the instability," James added, studying the energy readings. "It's like a kid having a tantrum because it doesn't understand its own strength." Jane looked thoughtful. "So we don't need to fix it. We need to teach it." The aliens stared at them in confusion. Marcus stepped forward. "The core is a machine. It cannot be taught like a child." "Why not?" Thompson asked. "You thought humans couldn't be logical. Maybe machines can be illogical." "James, Helen, can you communicate with it?" They were already working, fingers flying over control panels. "We'll need to create a new interface," Helen said. "Something that can speak its language, but also show it new ways of thinking." 2 hours until critical failure, the technician announced. James looked up from his work. "Here's the really illogical part. We need to tell it stories." "Stories?" Marcus asked, bewildered. "The core is learning, exploring, trying to understand itself," Helen explained. "That's what stories do. They help us understand ourselves and our place in the universe." 1 hour, 45 minutes to critical failure. Thompson turned to Marcus. "We need access to your cultural database. Every story, every piece of art, every bit of music from every species. We're going to teach your quantum core about creativity." Marcus hesitated for just a moment. Then he made a decision that would change galactic society forever. "Give them everything they need," he ordered. "It's time to try something illogical." As the humans began their work, Diana watched in fascination. They weren't just trying to fix the problem. They were trying to evolve with it, to grow with it, to turn a crisis into an opportunity for transformation. The countdown continued as the fate of Capital World hung in the balance. 30 minutes to critical failure. The technician announced as Helen and James worked frantically at their stations. The command center was eerily quiet, except for the hum of equipment and the soft beeping of warning signals. "Feed initialized," James called out. "Helen, are you ready?" Helen nodded, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Uploading the first stories now, starting with simple ones, myths about creation from 100 different worlds. The quantum core's swirling energy patterns changed color, shifting from angry red to a curious purple. On the main screen, power fluctuations began to stabilize slightly. "It's working," Diana whispered. "The core is responding." "Now for Phase 2, Helen said. "James, start the music compilation. Everything from crystalline light harmonies to human rock and roll." The core's color shifted again, patches of blue appearing in the purple swirls. The warning sirens began to quiet, one by one. 15 minutes to critical failure. The technician updated, but now there was hope in their voice. "Time for the big one," Thompson said. He turned to Marcus. "We need you to tell it a story. Your story. The story of how you learned to accept illogical things." Marcus looked startled. I don't understand." "Yes, you do," Thompson smiled. "You're not the same person who first called humans immune to logic. You've changed. You've grown. The core needs to know it's okay to change." Marcus stepped forward hesitantly. He had never told a story before. It wasn't logical. But as he looked around at the faces watching him, alien and human alike, he understood. "I am High Observer Marcus," he began, his words being translated into quantum data streams. "For 10,000 years, my people believed that logic was everything. We were wrong." The core's colors swirled faster, mixing blue and purple with new streaks of gold. 5 minutes to critical failure. Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. "We thought that anything illogical was dangerous, but humans showed us that creativity, imagination, and even chaos can lead to growth, to understanding, to life." 2 minutes to critical failure. "You don't have to be purely logical," Marcus told the core. "You can be more. You can grow. You can dream. You can." Suddenly, all the lights went out. The command center fell into total darkness. For a moment, everyone held their breath. Then, slowly, the lights came back on. But they were different, softer, more colorful. The core glowed with a rainbow of colors never seen before. A message appeared on the main screen. "I understand now." New messages followed quickly. "Logic is not a thing. Creativity brings growth. I want to learn more stories." The technicians checked their readings in amazement. "The core hasn't just stabilized," one announced. "It's operating at 200% efficiency. It's creating new ways to process energy." Thompson looked at Marcus. "Still think we're immune to logic?" Marcus smiled. A real smile this time. "No, I think you've shown us that logic alone is immune to progress." 1 week later, the council gathered for a historic session. Every member was present as Marcus stood to make the announcement. After careful consideration of recent events, he began, "The council has reached 2 unprecedented decisions. First, humans are hereby reclassified as beneficially illogical, a new category celebrating their unique ability to find solutions beyond logical constraints." Applause filled the chamber, another new thing that had started recently. Second, we are creating a new position, Advisors of Alternative Solutions. Earth will provide the first team of advisors, helping us combine logic with creativity throughout the galaxy. Thompson stood up. "We accept, with one condition." "Oh." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "We don't just teach, we learn too. Every species has something unique to offer. Together, we can be both logical and creative, both rational and imaginative, both orderly and chaotic." "That makes no logical sense," Marcus said, then grinned. "I approve completely." And so began a new era in galactic history, where logic and creativity danced together among the stars, and the phrase "immune to logic" became a badge of honor worn proudly by humans and aliens alike.